Hello, everyone. This is Alexander Horat with the Morgan Millennial Minute Report. The show is brought to you by David Morgan of themorganreport.com. Today, we're going to be having a very special guest named Alex. He is a macro analyst who specializes in precious metals. But before we get into it, if you could please subscribe to the YouTube channel, that'll be really appreciated. Hello, Alex. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, inviting me onto the show.
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to ask you, do you think we're entering into a inflationary or deflationary period in the economy?
Like short-term wise, we're
Yeah,
going to experience deflation. But the thing is, with inflation itself, it is the change of the inflation rate. Because no matter what, you're still gonna have inflation in like prices of food, or it's gonna be decrease in quality. However, you will still have that rate of change, aka the derivative of inflation, decrease over time. And that itself is massive for the global economy and the impacts of that.
okay. So do you think this deflationary period has been something that has been planned to happen?
I don't say it's planned. It is just due to 20 to 30 plus years of economic negligence on understanding the financial plumbing of the world. Because if you actually understood that the global economy itself is based on dollars and dollar denominated assets, and you ignore the fact that central banks are not central, and yet everyone believes that you cannot fight the Fed, when in actuality, people have been fighting the Fed for years, and they've been successful. That shows that our modern way of viewing the economy is wrong.
Okay. So why do you think there's going to be deflation instead of inflation in the short
The
term?
reason why I believe that is because you can look at either the euro dollar forward rates, which most people do not know that euro dollars exist. You can look at the offshore money. You can look at the dark pool account that Goldman Sachs has been utilizing before the actual Monday drop of the markets. It should be Monday or Tuesday, but it should be that huge drop of 1,000 points. And if you really consider it, why is it that the growth that we have been experiencing since 2000 onwards has been constantly declining over time, where people understood that their quality of life has been decreasing? They might say it's the Fed, but in actuality, it's because people do not understand that dollars is the most precious asset, because that is the exchange mechanism between the US and several other currencies and other nations talking to each other and then going back to the US.
Okay. So do you think through this deflation, things like home prices are going to be going down and other assets like that?
Yes, I really believe home price will go down. The reason why is because if you like JP Morgan or several other home pricing like research that has been going out for years, they've been showing that the home builders estimate has actually been going up in like going flatline, when in actuality it has actually been going down for the home buyers for a long period of time. And I sent you an image of this, Alex, right now, if you were
Okay.
to look at it,
Yep.
if you were to show people. And this is why I'm saying home prices will get down, because no matter what, if no one's buying and your builders are always building more, it's just almost a microcosm of what has happened in 2006 onwards, where builders are like saying, yeah, let's build, but no one's buying.
Yep. So I'm going to share the screen so the viewers can see what you sent me. So here it is, everyone. Um, yeah, that's pretty the home builder sentiment versus consumer home buying. So what is this telling us, Alex?
So what it's telling us is that the buyers itself is not buying anymore, because one, people already moved from New York and California over to southern states and they already bought it already. Second, you have all the like people in retirement that should have sold their houses at the beginning of the crisis, choosing to not sell, not rent out, and buy a secondary house to where they actually want to be in. So those houses had to be on like liquidated and put onto the market. And three, you already have BlackRock already buying the houses that people actually need after the mortgage moratorium ends, which is this month, aka the single and like single family houses in the one person houses. And no one buying the condos, and thus the prices have to go down.
Wow. Okay. So do you think this will affect the rental market as well? Do you think rents will go down with the home value, or do you think they will stay more stable compared to the housing prices?
The thing is, the rent prices had to stay somewhat elevated to where it is now because of the catch up rent. And I don't see any legislation on the clawback of that. and thus it stays higher, but eventually, like 3 to 6 months, due to the fact that prices of rent is a lagging indicator from the actual house itself, eventually it will go down. But as of this moment, I do not see any signs for the rent to actually stay like to go down at this current moment.
So how do you think, vacation rentals like Airbnb or VRBO will perform in a deflationary period? Do you think they'll still do well, or do you think they will less people will be traveling?
It depends upon what the governments do, because right now we have to ask the political question of, will the government bail us out? And if the government does not bail out the people, which they've been trying to, then you have the cash flow, like hotel and like retail stuff, like Airbnb. That stuff will decrease, and thus it'll be a market liquidity cycle where they have to forcefully sell, even if they don't want to. And thus, we can see that stuff, see those types of apps itself will be much more faster than the actual houses that you people rent out, because for those you have people locked in for like 3 to 6 months versus the Airbnb, what could just cancel on a moment's notice.
Okay, so do you think some of the bigger players like banks and some big players in the economy will be buying up houses during this period? What are your
Oh,
thoughts?
they already are.
They
It
are.
just, how much do they want to buy up once
Right.
it actually hits the market?
Okay, so what do you think will happen after this period of deflation, this in the short term?
After this bout period of deflation that will occur to the economy, it's going to inflate again. Again, what can people not take in the market? A constantly decreasing stock market and asset prices.
Right.
So the Fed will have to buy it up with the PPP team and everyone else. Why? Because everyone's pensions, 401ks, and IRAs are built upon it. And if that goes down, then the global liquidity that people utilize on a day-to-day market decreases. And once it hits a certain period or certain inflection point, there's no way to recover.
Okay.
Because how can you survive with a 40% drawdown onto 20 to 30 years of your hard work, and yet no one's going to bail you out? Do you think that you really continue to buy and like constantly build stuff? No. That's why you need to have the government bail them out, which means more inflation afterwards.
So do you think once we have this inflation, do you think that's when the system is going to collapse and they'll have to make something new?
No,
No. Okay.
no, because we need to roll out CBDCs, because you need to have negative rates.
I see.
Like once you get to that point, then all hands are off the table. I do not understand what's going to happen afterwards, because it ties in with many events. But the thing is that I'm most certain about is that I know that I sent you some research about Malthus, right?
Yes.
And what the reason between like Ricardo versus Malthus, if you were to consider their debates, what Malthus did not consider was private property and the ease of access to acquire food in one area and then transport it before it perishes to another area. And once this all occurs, you will have an issue, maybe like in 40 to maybe even 80 years, that you'll have issues with trying to get food, which we're seeing a rise of in third world nations due to this pandemic, and become even much worse because there's a lack of liquidity. So think about it like this. If you have massive inflation and massive deflation, which is the same exact thing, it's just that the effects of it are different. You see that what's the main good that you do not have in both those environments that everyone wants?
Food.
Food, energy, water, everything.
Right.
Why is it? Because the message signal, aka the currency that you utilize, is not working or you do not have it. That is why you need to have ways to view this ahead of time and prepare yourself so it does not affect you as much as if you were to continue and just not look at it.
Yeah, definitely. So, for the viewers who are watching, do you have a little bit of an estimated time when you think this deflation is going to occur and then the inflation? Do you have any idea when that'll happen?
The deflation itself will be around maybe 2 to 4, like 4 months, because it's consider how long it would take for people to draw on their credit card lines and their savings before actually trying to go to the government and force them to do something. And then after you have that effect of like people trying to wear down on their savings, and then that would slowly cause a deflation. You then have to consider this. How long will it take the government to actually inflate it back up?
Right.
And thus I cannot tell about the inflation side of that.
Okay, so how do you think millennials can begin to prepare for this deflation that's coming?
A way to prepare for this is have assets that are liquid and don't like and choose to take some risk off the table. And if you got some profits through stocks, like crypto and all that stuff, take some profit. Again, there's nothing wrong with hedging your profits with potential downside.
Yeah,
Because what do you want to be in? 100% fully invested when there's a 20 to 40% drawdown, or be 20 like 40 like 50% invested, take a 20% drawdown out of 50%, invest all the 50 back in for a greater gain.
yeah, that makes sense. So do you think there's any assets that will stay high that might not deflate as much as others?
I'm not a stock analyst nor financial advisor, so I cannot give my recommendation on that. But one of the few assets that I view as very liquid, which even the big international settlements agreed upon, is commodity money, aka gold or silver, because I see it as one, an asset that gives you long-term protection on both hyperdeflation and hyperinflation, or a hyperstagflationary environment. While at the same exact time, in the short term, it is a liquidity coupon, a liquidity insurance. Because think about it like this: if I were to give you an asset that will give you insurance in the long run, it will hold it for even 1,000 years, but you can also sell that insurance right now at the market, maybe with the 5 to 20% drawdown, who wouldn't? It just, how long are you prepared to invest? And for millennials, it is crucially key to utilize your time to leverage it for your advantage.
Yeah. So do you think food prices are going to deflate with along with housing and other things like that?
I would say that food prices will can deflate, can. It depends on how much the market draws down and how fast the government will backstop the market. Because food prices can deflate by maybe like 5%, like from your like $2 chips to $1.59, $1.80, 89. It just, do you really see that as deflation, or do you just see it as inflation, but you get like one or two chips back into your chip bag?
Right. So do you think one problem a lot of millennials have been facing have been the rising fuel costs in places such as California? I think it's about like 4.40 for gas here in California. Do you think, oil and gas are going to go down, or do you think these oil companies will not allow that to happen?
Well, you need to consider the political environment with oil, because what does everyone push? ESG, like economically sustainable governance. And what is the key like industry that people are trying to push? Renewable energy.
Yeah.
So how can you clear the energy required to build up that infrastructure and same exact time clear the energy that is needed to fuel the global economy at the same exact time? You need to have a higher fuel price. So if that is the case, why is the Biden government choosing not to allow food prices to rise? Because it actually hurts the real economy and real growth. So if that is the case, and the government wants to keep energy prices stable, then you need to push your view on ESG a lot longer than people are actually factoring in now. And the government does not want that. So eventually it is forcing the oil companies who are not investing into CapEx to invest into oil and energy or raise the prices so high that people are forced to go to renewables, even though it's not complete.
Yeah, that makes pretty good sense because California has the highest fuel prices in the whole United States, and they have the highest taxes too. So I think your assessment is probably true. So, what are some signs for millennials to know that the deflationary period is ending? maybe to buy houses or some other assets when it's going to go up? What are some signs you think we should look for?
Well, before I get to that question, I need to talk about California, and what you mentioned is because California itself is one of the main states that is promoting ESG and green bonds, which I don't know if many of your viewers know about, but I really recommend that most people look up on green bonds and social bonds, because that ties hand in hand with ESG and what is currently being pushed into the governance model. But back onto your question about the deflation, I hear from some people in the market that are saying there's a potential that we could see one interest rate onto how mortgage buying houses, 1%, where they push the long year down. I see that as if we see that at all, that is when you know that you probably should be getting to a housing market. But even if that does not happen, when you actually see the deflationary end is when you see people in the White House and Congress saying, hey, we need to spend because the real economy, insert this group or insert this issue, needs to have more cash unless you have more spending from the government to directly inject more stimulus checks into their hands. And this child tax credit right now is a form of it, but it's not enough. So if we see more of those policy issues constantly going to the forefront, then you know that eventually this deflationary cycle has to end, because you get more cash into the broader world outside the US for them to utilize. So it makes them to actually be able to utilize those cash into a more effective rate, so we don't have deflation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just watch what the government's doing. Yeah, that's true. So, do you think this deflationary period is going to be worldwide, or do you think it's just going to affect America?
Worldwide. Because again, what is the one currency that every single country in the world is utilizing at the same exact time?
Dollars.
So if it happens to us, it happens to everyone else, because they are utilizing the same exact currency.
Uh, yeah, that makes pretty good sense. So, do you think the U.S. dollar will eventually be destroyed, or do you think it will just continue?
It eventually it will be replaced and then destroyed, but it depends upon the global macro environment. I cannot say if China's going to hack the US tomorrow. I can't say that. Or I don't even know if that's going to happen. It just, what is the probability of the US dollar existing in the same exact form as it is in the next 30 years? It's not really likely at all, because one, you have the entire US trying to pull out of world politics, which was its current objective, or its viewed objective since 1960s onwards. You have the US not providing the transportation of goods freely from one place to another without taxing other countries. You have the US not securing energy transportation from the Middle East onwards and constantly increasing the destabilization of that area, which makes higher oil prices. And you have internal conflicts in the US. So the US cannot actually fight against another currency fully.
Okay, so what are some I think you gave some pretty good points, but do you have any other tips for millennials to build and preserve their wealth during these times?
One of the main tips that I would suggest is that you build up your knowledge and skills. That's it. Why? Because if you have those two things, and experience comes along with that once you do it over time. Once you have those two things, then it doesn't matter to have 2 rubles, 2 yen, 2 pesos. You can build yourself back up. And what the biggest flaw that I see now is that people gamble everything in crypto markets, and for millennials specifically, to get 2,000, 3,000, 5,000% returns. And they do it again and again and again. And they don't know how to be successful, even if they have nothing or been gaining 1% a year. So you need to have experience and knowledge to make sure that you are making the right decision at this moment for your environment and for your situation. Because what's good for me, what's good for Alex, what's good for anyone else is different from what is necessary for you.
Yeah, I think that's about the best advice. That's really good. So could you tell the viewers a little bit about the website that you're building and what you plan on doing with that?
Yeah, I'm building up a website that is focused on the macro lens, like geopolitically and economically, so you can understand how like issues with the like demographics are affecting each other. Like how in the US specifically, you have the issues with the millennials and Gen Z against the boomers and the retirees of like, and how that conflict itself will occur in political environments and economic environments. So you can invest yourself properly or view some issues before people factor it. So you can then put yourself in the right position. Same with understanding how the macroeconomy works. So you can see, hey, I see this as a long-term view. If you want to see this along with me, you can, and that's what the website is for.
Oh, well, that's great. So, yeah, when you have it up and running, I hope the viewers can go and check it out. And I would like to thank you for being on the Morgan Millennial Minute, and I hope you can be on the show again soon.
Yep, pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, thank you. And for everyone who is watching, if you could please subscribe to the morganreport.com and like the video and share it with your friends, that'll be really appreciated. Thank you all. God bless.